Stun guns, tasers, how do they fit into the whole weapons mix here in Rhode Island?
The Dan Yorke State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Taco Comfort Solutions.
There'll be some 15 bills that, as you're watching this at 7:30, are probably being sifted through at the House of Representatives and the Senate tonight on issues of guns. If you're watching this at midnight, they still might be going. You can take a peek at Capitol TV after this show is over. I'll give you permission to do so. But beneath all of that is another conversation about the stuff that surprisingly is regulated, and we have one representative who says perhaps it shouldn't be. That is the use of stun guns or tasers or some combination of each. I'm not exactly sure the definitions, but we'll find out about that tonight. Nice to have you in. Thank you very much for tuning in to the Tuesday edition of Dan Yorke's State of Mind. Let me just check on a couple of things that are going on first before we introduce the Cranston veteran representative. It is nice to see that Bush 41 is feeling better. I mean, the heartbreak that he must be suffering after losing his wife of 73 years it just must be incredible. But he's got an incredible strength, and reportedly this morning he was talking about his earnest desire to get back to Kennebunkport. So if he's got that in mind, that may mean that he can beat some of this infection that he has in his blood, that he came out over the weekend and spent 20 minutes at the viewing of Barbara and showed that kind of stamina all the way throughout is just remarkable. The longest living president the United States has had. Hopefully he's got a couple, 3 more, 5, 10 more in him. We'll see. I would think that a lot of people would understand or predict even, that he may not be long given he loses his partner. But if you got a will, and you got a way, and you got a vision, and you got the strength, and he seems to have it, he could very well make yet another recovery. So say a prayer for both Bushes there. And of course he says, don't worry about us, which is typical George Bush. Let's come home and talk about a couple things that are going on that are just cracking me up here. This East Providence elections thing is just nuts. I don't understand how the common sense just seems to evaporate from local government, state government. There's a basic problem in East Providence right now. Not that they've changed their form of local government. The voters in 2017, in an off-year election, approved a charter change to move from a town manager form of government to a mayoral form of government. That's fine. But back in 2012, there was a referendum that passed 3-1, pretty low voter turnout, I think, but 3-1 anyway, to extend the terms for councilors from 2 to 4 years. So too for the school committee. Well, in 2013, there was legislation that was sent up to the State House to ratify this erroneously. There is no necessity for the General Assembly to approve local charter for the operation of government, meaning the council. The school committee is regulated by the General Assembly in the sense the General Assembly has jurisdiction over education matters, and the terms therein are regulatable. So some knucklehead didn't figure out that those two things are separatable. So anyway, it gets kind of in the mill, and the Senate passes a legislation piece, and the House passes a legislation piece, but neither one talked to each other, and a governor never signed it. So it just kind of sifted away. And in 2014, they had another election for a 2-year term. And then in 2016, they had another election for a 2-year term. And so we have sitting councilors in East Providence who've been elected to a 2-year term. But there are 3 councilors in East Providence who think that, you know what, they'd like to see the term extended to 4 years, because back in 2012, the referendum said extended to 4 years. When you go into the voting booth and you see a ballot that says choose 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to a 2-year term, that is the act that you as a voter are making. So whatever the confusion is about a 2012 referendum and what happened with the General Assembly and back and forth and all of that is relevant, but doesn't rule the day. If you want to extend the terms finally to 4 years, it seems to me that there's some elasticity that you can still exercise between what happened in 2012 and what might happen in 2018. And if you want to make the terms 4 years for the council, fine by me, fine by the Constitution. But you cannot, as a sitting elected official, extend your term simply because you think you should. You must be elected to the term that you were voted in for. If you give yourself 2 more years, you're giving yourself a raise, which, by the way, according to the statutes in Rhode Island, is illegal. We're going to have some of these East Providence folks in here on Thursday. But the reason I raise this is just to show the folly of what happens in local government and state government when they don't talk to each other, and folks who just think that they can make the rules up as they go along. All this was brought to our attention by Jim Hummel's good reporting with the Hummel Report in the Providence Journal, and we'll dig in. We've been doing some work on the radio on it as well. But if you live in East Providence, don't sell your house yet. But I'd be close, because the incompetence is like at this high at this point. All right, let's talk about one more thing. This is just a whole hullabaloo about nothing, but a lot of noise is being made. Mike Chippendale is a state representative, Republican, who's a strong Second Amendment guy, he would say, and he got into a tangle with Emma Gonzalez. Emma Gonzalez is one of the young ladies from Parkland, from Douglas High School, who's become a real advocate for gun safety and the like. There she is. He tweeted at her. They had she posted something about the Waffle House shooting in Tennessee, and that there's evidence there based on the play-by-play of that awful tragedy that you don't have to have a gun to disarm or to scare away a shooter. Mike Chippendale tweeted in, having followed her tweet, from way out here in New England, that if somebody had a gun, they wouldn't be chasing the assailant, meaning he'd be all done, right? And at the end of it, he writes, "Dummy." He calls her a dummy. Well, look, those who live in glass houses can't throw stones. Dummy is like light for me. I have no problem saying that somebody's a dummy, or worse. In fact, I probably just did about East Providence, a bunch of dummies over there. But you have to have some sensibility when it comes to young people. You have to have some sensibility when it comes to young people who have been traumatized by a criminal, heinous act. You have to have some sensibility about what you write, because I would submit that what you write, and certainly on social media and Twitter, sticks. So I think Mike has learned his lesson. He's the co-chairman of the Alan Fung campaign, so now Alan Fung thinks it's stuck on him. He demands that Chippendale apologize, and then kind of points his finger at him for unthinking behavior through a spokesperson. Joe Trillo, who is now the independent candidate for governor, put out a press release today admonishing Alan Fung for throwing Chippendale under the bus. We asked Mike if he wanted to talk to us about it. He said, "I think I've done it." The text said something along the line of, "I think I've done enough damage for the day. I just like to talk about the issues." We'll give you that break, Mike. Lessons learned. Everybody calm down, But sensibilities are important. And when young people are advocating for issues, whether they be guns or not, they deserve a little bit of room and probably a deep breath. In the meantime, we have this headline, which is our point of discussion this evening. I didn't realize that Massachusetts had a Supreme Court decision on the use of stun guns, and that Charlene Lima has been kind of plowing away at this issue for a while, right?
Hi, Dan.
You're not going to call anybody dummy here, are you? You're going to call me a dummy? No. Yeah. But you and I have had some good tussles over the course of time. I don't know. We might have. Silly, huh?
We have, and it's okay to disagree, but you have to do it in a manner where it's effective.
Disagree without being disagreeable? I don't believe that either. I just think you got to watch. You got to be careful with kids. How you been?
Good, thank you. Good.
Tell me give me the executive summary of what you're trying to accomplish here, and then we'll play an eyewitness news story on it and develop the concept.
Basically, to have Rhode Island legalize stun guns and tasers, as they are in right now about 47 other states.
I had no idea they were illegal here. So good for you.
I did not know until I did my research. And how it came about was a woman was afraid of her ex-boyfriend. He was violent in Massachusetts. And so she got a stun gun. She got arrested and she got charged as a criminal. And she appealed it to the Supreme Court in Massachusetts, and they upheld the conviction. And then a group called Arming Women Against Rape and Endangerment took the issue to the United States Supreme Court, and the United States Supreme Court overturned her conviction and basically said that be careful because this is a violation of your Second Amendment rights. And the United States and the Massachusetts Supreme Court then reversed itself and said that we cannot ban them. And the Massachusetts legislature right now is also working on legislation so they will not be banned. So, you know, it's a non-lethal form of self-defense. The court has already ruled, so whether you like it or not, I think the issue is moot because there could be lawsuits and a waste of taxpayer dollars if someone gets caught in Rhode Island with a stun gun and sues. The United States Supreme Court's already ruled.
All right, so what do we do about that when we come back? Stay with us. All right, welcome back. So here's the latest that Eyewitness News put together on this issue of stun, laser, taser, guns, whatever. No laser guns.
You're defending yourself, and every individual should have that right.
Representative Charlene Lima says it's a fear we all know. That bad feeling you have when you're walking by yourself in the dark and there's no one else in sight, not knowing what could happen next.
Some people do not want to carry a lethal weapon, but they want to be able to defend themselves.
She's tired of hearing horrifying stories and says allowing people to own a stun gun could prevent attacks from unfolding. Currently, the weapon is banned in Rhode Island.
It's a handheld device that you would have to touch someone either on the arm or somewhere on the body that would give them a slight jolt.
Rhode Island is one of the few states that completely outlaws stun gun ownership. Massachusetts was also on that list until earlier this week. The Massachusetts Supreme Court called the restriction unconstitutional. The state is now in the process of rewriting the law. The ruling in the Commonwealth inspiring Representative Lima to try again.
This is the direction the country is going. It's almost every single state.
The president of the Rhode Island Second Amendment Coalition tells Eyewitness News the group is in favor of the idea as long as people are licensed. However, Representative Lima says she doesn't believe that's necessary.
Yeah, I'm a little confused, actually, that any Second Amendment people would have a problem with this in terms of the licensure. I mean, you can pick up some of this stuff for $10. I mean, I just can't imagine that you have to have a license for some stun gun that you can spend $10, $50 on.
I spoke to them today, and the taser used to be operated with gunpowder. And the taser companies no longer use gunpowder, they use nitrogen in order to shoot out the dots that would have to come and touch your body. So I looked at a lot of other states and what they did, and they did not have the same. The majority of states have no regulation. So I said on the stun gun, of course you should be of age. On the taser...
Of age being?
An adult, 18, 21. I was tossing that all around. I think I settled on 18, but I want to hear what they have to say in committee.
Okay.
I think I'd rather have it at 21. I know you can join the Army at 18, but in the Army, I mean, you're monitored so closely on everything. The taser...
Well, for self-defense purposes, I don't see why a 19-year-old young lady walking on a college campus couldn't have a stun gun.
Yeah, on the college campus, if I was on a college campus, I definitely have one with
Seriously?
all the assaults we hear.
Huh?
On the taser, I put in where it would be, again, of age, no criminal record, and you would have to show, because it's something that shoots out proficiency, whatever type of regulations, either the AG, the state police, the people who use these weapons come up with, maybe a written test and then a demonstration that you know what you're doing.
Well, then that's regulation. So you're arguing against yourself.
On the taser only.
On the taser only. A stun gun's different. What's the technical difference between the two?
A stun gun, you would have to actually touch the person's body.
Right.
But they have them. They have so many different ones. They have them in canes, and I'm not suggesting that people with Alzheimer's are going to run around with these canes, as one of the callers said. All I'm saying is these are the different types of stun guns they have. They have them where they extend out. The taser is a bigger instrument, and it shoots out two projectiles that have to touch the person to startle them or momentarily have them freeze. So it would give you an opportunity for self-defense purposes to get away.
Well, what do other states have for the tasers? Do they have regulations for the tasers?
Most of them do not. Some of them do have some type of regulations. They're kind of all over the place.
So what are you going to do? You going to have hearings on this?
I have hearings, and I want to get input to learn what people have to say, what law enforcement has to say, what the public has to say, and then we can fine-tune it if we have to.
But with the pressing decision by the Mass Supreme Court, you don't want this to be untended over the next months and years.
You know what, if we don't do it, and Dan Yorke's walking around with a stun gun, and he gets arrested, you know you're going to go to court and you're going to win. It's just going to waste more tax dollars fighting it.
Tell me about what you think about the current crop of bills in the State House right now on guns per se. You have any particular leaning?
Well, I believe in the Second Amendment. I believe in the whole Constitution and the Constitution as a whole. I think that when you get bogged down on different types of guns, you're really doing a disservice to what's going on. I think what's going on in society, we need to focus on two things: mental health, which we addressed in the red flag legislation, and we need to focus on securing our schools. I don't think a parent would care if their children got killed with an AR-15 or a .45 or a 9mm or a hatchet. They want the schools secure to protect the children. But the argument is focusing on which type of weapon, because basically, I mean, you're saying no guns in school. Do we have a problem in this state with people, law-abiding citizens with carry permits, taking guns into school? No. So who are we talking about? We're talking about criminals, people with mental illness, or terrorists. Okay, do you think a person with mental illness or a terrorist is going to stop and see a sign and say, oh, they don't allow guns here on this school, I better go somewhere else?
No.
No, we need bulletproof glass. I proposed in 1994, way back then, put metal detectors in schools. An armed guard in the school. We have
well, we have armed resource officers
in the middle schools
and the high schools.
Right.
I've never understood after Newtown why we didn't make a move on the elementary schools. And these secret security plans, every school has a master security plan, but it can't be known. As if most of the people that are going to make that kind of a move are casing the plans. These are acts generally of spontaneity, insanity, all of that. But I am flabbergasted over the idea that we do not have armed resource officers in the elementary schools. I mean, that is, I just don't understand it. Our precious cargo, 12 to, K through 5, 8-year-olds, we don't protect them.
I don't know how the younger children were left out. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, what do you see evolving from this at the State House? This gun commission that the governor's put together, I don't see it doing a lot of recommendations on the schools themselves. It seems more like a national political platform debate than it does an actual logistics problem to solve here in the state. And not too many of these bills that are actually up in the hopper right now on guns themselves address the school safety issue. It just seems to slip past. Why?
I think the focus is wrong, and people are just looking at the type of weapon as opposed to looking at the school. And I know one of the main issues is it's going to cost money to secure the schools, but you want to compare money to children's lives? I mean, we come up with money for all kinds of things. I think protecting a child's life is a pretty important reason to come up with some money.
All right. You're also big on protecting the animal's life. New idea as well. There's always an animal conversation with the representative when we come back. Stay with us. All right, welcome back in. Animal Retirement Act. There's always something for the doggies and the cats when it comes to State Representative Charlene Lima. I mean, you can thank her for you being able to bring your dog to dinner. That one blew me away.
If the restaurant owner decides outside with regulations.
I know. Anyway, what is this one? This one is, if you research with them, find them a home.
Yeah, research facilities are regulated federally as far as what goes on in the research lab. However, there's nothing that addresses what happens to the animal once the research is done. And basically, they are euthanized, thrown in the garbage. Thank you for your service. Thank you for helping science. You're gone.
What are we talking about? Dogs, cats, whatever?
Dogs and cats. And currently in Rhode Island, well, as of statistics 2 years ago, it's hard to get current ones, there were 50 dogs, predominantly beagles because of their good, easygoing nature, and 51 cats that are being used for research in the state of Rhode Island.
Where? Who's doing the research?
Universities, different facilities, URI, Brown University, those types of places use them.
How long do they generally go in for research?
Could be 2 years, could be 10 years. It's all over the place. Sometimes they're injected with cancer. I want you to know they sit alone in a cell all day, and they're exposed to all types of medical testing. This research group rescue group I was working with, they have videos of when they've rescued thousands of them and had them put up for adoption in forever homes. And when the animals are let out of the cage, they're actually afraid to touch the grass. They've never touched grass. They've never seen sunlight. So all I'm saying is, once you're done with this research, can't we at least give them a happy ending and a nice forever home?
Is there a market for that? I mean, is there
absolutely.
Is there a market for people who will take those dogs?
Absolutely. They get them all adopted, and they do such a great process. They hold the animal in a foster home to make sure the animal's okay. Of course, the veterinarian at the research facility would have to okay that the animal's
okay for public.
Okay for adoption. If not, they can do what they usually do. And they match them up with a home. We had Tucker the Beagle up at the State House, and he has the people have 2 other dogs, and he sat in committee, I'll show you the picture, for hours, paid more attention than anybody in the room, and was so well behaved. He was so lovable, and the people are so happy with him. So they even do follow-up visits, and they make sure it's a perfect match. It's a really fantastic group, and it's a real good thing to do.
You gonna get that passed?
I hope so. We did pass it past the House already.
Oh, the Senate didn't take it up?
The Senate will be taking it up, and I'm hoping it passes.
Oh, you already passed the House on this?
It passed the House 2 weeks ago.
Oh,
yeah.
good for you. Well, that makes sense to me. I didn't realize we had that many research animals.
And they don't have to use dogs and cats anymore. There's other technology they can use, but it's more expensive. It always comes down to money, right, Dan? And so they want to use the animals right now. So we're saying, you know, enough is enough. At least let them die peacefully or retire peacefully.
Thumbs up on that one. See, I'm with you on that animal legislation.
Great.
There we go. Final word, stun gun, taser gun process, days, weeks, or what? Short answer.
We'll be introducing it Wednesday. This Wednesday.
We'll see where it ends up. Always good to visit. Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Charlene Lima, final word when we come back. Coming up on the program tomorrow, this was an incredible story. When the Duke lacrosse program got all busted up with the athletes accused of rape, and they end up, after an investigation, a real one, beating those charges. You know, caught in that crazy situation was their head coach, Mike Pressler, who ended up leaving Duke and ended up at Bryant. And this is now years ago, and his loyalty to Bryant has remained, and he's built a program there that is of national caliber. For the first time, we'll have Mike Pressler here to discuss the travel of his storied career. And I'm looking forward to that. We'll see you on the radio tomorrow at 3 until 6. Dan Yorke Show on the other side. Have a great night. Bye.